You're listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, the show that invites you into the lives of people who make up the Ultra family. Here's your host for these conversations, Larry Ryan.
Thanks, MJ. Today's guest was the perfect person to put between episodes about Florida and Arizona, as he has had a relationship with both. And as an island resident, he has also raced and crewed many times at the World Championships. Get ready for some great advice today from this well-known Ohana member. Aloha, Ohana, and Kokua are part of the native environment of my next Ohana guest, as he lives in Kamuela, Hawaii, on the Big Island. There he has had the opportunity to race 70.3s and 5 times at the Ironman World Championships. So naturally, he was introduced to the Ultraman world. He has spent many years crewing at 515 events and has taken on a few of his own. While some people go to Hawaii to swim with the dolphins, this guest did that and never left. Welcome to the podcast, Billy Rickards.
Thank you so much, Larry. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I really want to dig into that first thing that I mentioned, and that is I haven't had an animal trainer on the show before, so I want to know a little bit more about you swimming with the dolphin story. Can you take us back to when you graduated from James Madison and with a psych degree, and how that led to you going to Hawaii?
Yes, yeah. So I'll take it just a couple of years further back from that graduation date at James Madison. I started attending there and was interested in sports psychology and performance psychology. I'd always played soccer growing up and wanted to stay around sports, and I figured sports psychology and coaching would be something that would continue my career that way. And that kind of opened the door to psychology. And then in my junior year of college, I was introduced to a professor who was an ethologist, and I didn't know those existed. Those are animal psychologists. And a lot of the work that she was doing was kind of field research, looking at different animals in the field and more of the science aspect and publishing papers, et cetera, et cetera. And through her influence, I became interested in working with animals and animal psychology. And when I graduated in 1994 from James Madison, I sent out my applications to all different types of facilities that housed animals, zoos, aquariums, research facilities, and got accepted to an internship at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And there at the Kewalo Basin Marine Mammal Laboratory, they housed 4 Atlantic bottlenose dolphins, and were studying the language and cognitive aspects of those animals. And I was 21 years old and wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, but going to Hawaii and training dolphins for a summer sounded right up my alley. So I took that opportunity and really haven't looked back, living here in Hawaii since then and working with the animals there at Kewalo Basin, and then moved on a little bit and started working for a company called Dolphin Quest, which their original facility was over here on the Big Island of Hawaii. And that's what brought me over here to the Big Island.
And did you so you had no training in the training of dolphins at that point?
Absolutely not. So this internship was actually an introduction to training principles, behaviorism, et cetera. And at this facility, research students, graduate students would come in with certain ideas, research projects for the animals. And then us as interns would interface between the research students and the dolphins to be able to bring those research plans to fruition for the graduate students. So I was just learning about training, but in my background in coaching, kind of had a baseline background about behaviorism and changing behavior. And it wasn't completely foreign to me when I jumped up there on the stand and started working with the animals.
Oh. And what are some of the ways in which you do train the animals, and maybe you can compare it to your coaching as to some similarities, or what would be completely new and things that you had to learn about how their behavior is changed through coaching?
Absolutely. So, I guess at one level, the principles of behaviorism are kind of general for animals and humans, that we all work towards reinforcement and avoid negative stimulus or punishment. We wouldn't necessarily punish the dolphins, but they're so incredibly smart, or in Hawaii we say akamai, that they would pick up on the positive reinforcement aspect quite quickly. And once we developed a basic mode of communication, which with the dolphins would be through different hand signals, gestures with hands, etc. Through principles of behaviorism, we would treat the animals for their specific purpose. At the laboratory is to carry out certain research projects. At Dolphin Quest, it was an interactive educational program. So a lot of the training was working with the animals and just having them be comfortable with different hands touching them and being around different types of people. And certainly working with any subject, if it's a dolphin or a human being, you have to understand that specific subject's way of being and the way that they like to relate to the world and try to harmonize with that a little bit. Again, luckily dolphins, from the behaviorist point of view, are incredibly smart and they picked up on the training quite quickly, but they're also very social animals and really enjoy a lot of connection and compassion, I would say, and communication between themselves and also the trainers. So developing a personal relationship with each of the dolphins was a little bit of the focus as well. The same way you would, like if it was a crew and an athlete or a therapist and a client, that relationship and the trust is something that is a foundation that the work would build on. And that was really special. Being able to relate cross species is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I guess it would probably be a stretch at the beginning to think, oh, crewing an Ultraman is related to dolphin training. But, you know, you're able to put these two things together, and hopefully we can, you know, swing back around on that when we're talking about your Ultraman career as well in a little bit. But I do have a couple more questions for you still about the dolphins.
Sorry, absolutely. Yeah, they're amazing animals. Fire away.
Yeah. So, like nowadays with you know, sentient animals in captivity and things like that, there's a lot about the conservation and what should be happening. What's happening now in Hawaii these days? Are they trying to get away from it more? Or do they still see the research benefits? And what would be your thoughts on those things?
Sure. So I do have to say I'm quite removed from the animal world at this point. I moved into, I joke, I moved from training animals to training people. And I stopped working as an animal trainer in 2000. So it's been about 25 years since I've had my pulse on the industry of what's current in the animal world. But while I was involved, gosh, a quarter century ago, that sounds crazy to say that. But while I was involved, you know, it was certainly I would say a mixed bag as far as the health and well-being of the animals in captivity. And so much of that would depend on the facility itself and the match of the animal to the facility. So for example, I mentioned that both at Koala Basin and here at the Big Island, at their Dolphin Quest facilities, they would house Atlantic bottlenose dolphins, even though we're out here in the Pacific Ocean. And the reason for that is Atlantic bottlenose dolphins tend to frequent shallow inlets, bays, coast of Florida, Georgia, Alabama, et cetera, where Pacific bottlenose dolphins really don't do well in shallow environments. They need the deep water out here. And so with each facility having a species that would do well in that specific environment was, of course, the number one priority for a lot of facilities. When I was working, a lot of facilities were moving towards more of a natural environment type of facility. So at Dolphin Quest, it was a natural beach with salt water, not so much a tank or those types of things that you might see at other aquariums and zoos. And I know that was a push for the industry while I was involved as well. And there's no right or wrong, but there's lots of views across the board about animals in captivity. And, you know, that makes a lot of sense, I think, on one angle. And then from the other angle, you have people looking at such facilities as educational facilities so that the animals in the wild might receive more protection or support once someone has an opportunity to experience them firsthand.
Right.
overall, from the behavioral point, or I would say the animal trainer side for me, as long as our animals were healthy and happy, and by happy, I would mean engaging in their normal, expected animal behavior. Um, One criteria, I would say, a little bit would be, if they're continuing to get pregnant and have babies, and that's a good indication of health, oftentimes.
Mhm.
Um, but there is a lot of passion around animals from a lot of people, deservedly
Yeah.
so, because a lot of animals are just amazing, and human beings are connected with them. And I can certainly understand perspectives from multiple points of view around that, depending on where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I'm sure you are probably a pretty big animal lover too after having that experience and maybe with other animals anyway.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, it's one of the reasons I decided to invest my time and energy into animal psychology. Is I have a real affinity for lots of animals, small ones, big ones. And my original idea was that I would be studying, let's say, elephants in Africa and publishing scientific papers about that. But things took a turn in life, as they did. Um, but, I'm sitting here with my dog on the couch and eating chickens outside, and birds, and animals are very much a part of my world. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, do you have one particular dolphin story that's like your favorite story or your most memorable story, or just a story that um, that's a dolphin story. That's why I worked with dolphins.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a number of them. I was involved in a number of births with dolphins in both facilities, and to be able to um, be a part of such a sacred experience, watching a mom or helping a mom give birth to a calf, and watching those first hours is really quite unique. But I think one of the coolest ones that probably displays some of just the wicked intelligence of these animals. When I was at Koala Basin, and we were graduate students, again, we're studying the language and cognitive capabilities of these animals. So we had a gestural language of 400 or 500 different signs, and it would look like kind of like American Sign Language, but
Right.
maybe it was DSL, Dolphin Sign Language. And there would be little things like I would ask for a peck wave, right? And so then they'd roll over and wave their pectoral fin, and
Yeah.
simple things like that. But then we could string together long sentences. So I could say, take the left ball to the right hoop and take the pipe out of the basket and put the ball in the basket, and make a complete sentence that way
Wow.
through the whole language, and they would execute that. Then typically what would happen is I would mess up. And so I would get halfway through and go, oops, I got it wrong. And then I would just say erase, and they would erase everything that I had said, and I
Oh,
can start fresh. So this is a way that we would work with these animals.
so it's like
Um,
training an AI. You have to give them
yeah,
the exact prompt that you want.
you give them the prompt, exactly. And they were really smart enough. And so there was one graduate student that came up with a behavior, and that the sign was this, and it was called creative. And creative meant you can do whatever you want.
Oh,
You can improvise a behavior. So, out of the 400 behaviors that we taught, you could just make up a gobbledygook, like blah, 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 whatever you wanted to do, and that was fine. Or you could pick something from our prearranged list of behaviors, but you couldn't repeat within three. So if I gave you four creative signs, you would have to do A, B, C, and then before you return back to A to be reinforced. So there's two
mm.
options for creative. Okay.
Oh, cool.
So we'll put that to the side. Sometime later, we developed a sign when I would be training two animals together, which was tandem. And so if I had two animals together, and let's say I did tandem spit, the two animals would have to spit water at the same time
Mm.
simultaneously to be reinforced to meet the criteria for that behavior. So then, of course, because we like to have fun, we go, what if we did tandem creative? And so we introduced this sign for the first time to our two younger dolphins. And it's a research facility. So we have everything on videotape, and there's hydrophones
Mm.
underneath the water recording the sound. And the two dolphins, Hiapo and Alele, were there looking at me, and I signed tandem creative. And they kind of looked at me like, what the heck are we supposed to do with that? And then they went underwater and they swam around together, and it was we could hear on the hydrophones there
Cool.
communicating with each other, and then simultaneously did a simultaneous improvised behavior in complete synchrony.
That's
And
awesome.
so we thought, okay, was one leading the other? We slowed down the video. Maybe one was following the lead to start, but no, they were in complete synchrony and worked this out together underwater, that they would do this behavior. And that was really just kind of like, wow, like check them out. That's very cool. And there's lots of other instances where their intelligence and sociability was on full display, but I think that was one that stood out for sure.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I could ask you about dolphins all day, but maybe we should move on to some of the sporting career that you have as well. I know that as a youngster, you were a little bit more passionate about soccer,
Correct.
and you were playing at a pretty high level in that. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So, I got started in soccer as most kids do in their youth leagues. And I think it was kindergarten or first grade. I'm out there, ants on a sugar cube, just running around, and things just kind of progressed. And I tended to have a little bit of natural ability in just running. And as a youngster, that kind of worked out on the soccer field. And then as I approached high school, things got a little bit more competitive, and started trying out for some select teams and Olympic development teams, and played goalkeeper, which was not a very popular position for a lot of folks at the time. So I filled a niche
Yeah.
for a lot of teams, and really just enjoyed, as I do now, being in my body and being an athlete and running, and some of the competitive nature of sport. And continued that, not so much, a little bit of club soccer in college, but things took a turn in college as well. But that's really, I think, a lot of where my competitive and natural spirit came, and just loving being in my body in that way, growing up playing soccer in Virginia.
Oh yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
initially, your psychology, you were focusing on sports psychology and coaching. Is that correct? Did that come
That's
out of
right.
that?
That did. I was in high school, I was doing some coaching in youth leagues. And then in college, I was coaching a local high school team, and really wanted to, I still do, I just enjoy sports so much. I wanted to keep my lifestyle around that. At that time, weren't too many options in the US for domestic soccer. Now there are a lot more. So at the
Mm.
time, anyone that was interested in something like that was looking at a life in Europe, potentially, and that wasn't something I was interested in. So I thought maybe coaching would be something that would keep me close to the sport, but also here on the mainland U.S. And pursued that up until I met this animal psychologist, and then things took a little detour.
And then after your dolphin training comes to an end, which I can't believe you would end that, you went back to school
Yeah.
again and changed again. So what is it that you do now for work?
Sure. So, yeah, just a quick story about that. One of my favorite parts of working with the animals at the facility here on the Big Island at Dolphin Quest, it's an educational facility. So we would bring guests out of the hotel into the water, and they would pay for this experience to be able to learn to touch the dolphin and learn about the dolphin. It wasn't necessarily a show, but more of an educational thing. And we can show them their blowhole, and they could feel their belly button, et cetera. And one of my favorite parts was connecting with the guests. And just to be able to make a really strong connection with the guests and have them have a wonderful experience with the animals. And I've always enjoyed kind of being a people person that way. And I had one guest that really kind of planted the seed, and we had created a good connection. He was a little bit older, and he said, so what are you going to do after this? And I thought he meant like after my shift. I was like, well, I'll probably go home. And no, he goes, no, like after dolphin training. I had never really thought that I was going to do something after dolphin training. Same as you. Like, why would I change this? This is great. He goes, dude, you're not going to be like a 50-year-old dolphin trainer. Think about it. I was like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you don't see 50-year-old dolphin trainers, right? And So in my background in psychology, I thought about, my propensity to, I love helping and being of assistance. And I thought, well, this would be a great time to take an opportunity to go back to school. So I went to graduate school for professional counseling, and I have a license. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist now. And I've been in private practice up here in Waimea for 22, 23 years now in my office, serving families and couples and individuals in different aspects of their life and mental health.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah.
And when you are going through all of this schooling and changing of jobs and things like that, when did you start the family? Where does that lead into your story?
Yes. So one of the reasons I stayed in Hawaii, my wife Susan is born and raised on Oahu,
There you
and
go.
yeah. In 1994, when I was there in the summer, I fell in love with her, and she was a water person, and I fell in love with the ocean and fell in love with surfing, and it just made sense for me to stick around a little bit longer than just the summer.
Nice.
So her and I got to know each other in 1994, and I was in my master's program in 2000, and Susan and I got married in 2000, and we had our first child in 2003. Our children are now 21 and 18. And uh, yeah, so that just kind of naturally developed between Susan and I, and continues.
And when did you start first getting involved in triathlon? I guess being there on the Big Island, you're going to see it. When did you first start getting involved?
When I first thought, Larry, excuse my language, but I was like, fucking no way. Like, that's crazy. Not happening. In fact, I had a roommate that did the Ironman in, I think it was 2006. And he was out training all the time. I'm like, this guy has lost his marbles. Like, what are you doing? When for me at that time, I was a religious surfer. I was surfing every single day. I love being in the water. I love being in the ocean and connecting with the ocean and the swells. And um, that was really my hobby and my passion is being in the water and surfing. And I was surfing every day or as often as I could up until about 2012. I wasn't interested in triathlon at all. Running was terrible. Oh my God, why would someone run just to run? And, so I had a surfing buddy of mine said, hey, sometimes we go to the beach and we swim. And I'm like without a surfboard, like that's stupid. Like he goes, yeah, just bring goggles and we'll just go swimming. And I was always kind of a yes guy. I was like, okay, I guess I'll join up with you and go swimming. And, not interested in biking, not interested in running, but I went out and I swam and wasn't the greatest, but I didn't suck. I think because a lot of the surfing and ocean experience and the strength that you develop from surfing and paddling and that kind of thing. And so that tended to work out well. And then after joining those guys for their weekly swim once a week for a little bit, another person in the group said, hey, there's this triathlon. It's called the Lavaman. It's an Olympic distance triathlon here on the island. It's a really popular event. It's a great event. Some of us are going to sign up and do this triathlon. You're crazy. I know what that is. That's like the swimming and the biking and the running. And then they goaded me into it. And so I just kind of signed up on a whim, and I don't think I really trained. And I borrowed a road bike, and I had my baggy shorts and my baggy top, and out there just kind of winging it. And the standout moment for me, so it's a 10K run at the end of this Olympic distance triathlon, and I was toasted, Larry. Like I was done, DUM done by the time I got to this run, just blown up, and. I've since that time, I've done so many events and all the pictures that come, and I hardly save any pictures, but one picture I save was me at this event, and it was probably like mile 3, and I'm walking and I'm just blown up. My face is beet red. My lips are hanging down. I'm just, death marching this 10K Olympic distance run.
Yeah.
And it was so hard. I remember thinking, oh, this is going to be an awesome challenge trying to figure this out. And so I blew up that picture and I told myself I'm never going to be that guy again. And that's what kind of drew me to triathlon, that first event, and getting involved that way in a challenge of trying to understand my body more and push my body more to the next level, and
Yeah.
create the relationship, a better relationship with each one of the disciplines as well, the swimming, biking, and running. And so that just kind of took its natural evolution through the paces, being here.
Yeah, as it does with most people, a little bit longer, a
Yeah.
little bit longer, a little bit longer.
Yeah. Hey, what's the next scary thing? Right. And so I went back the next year and I did the Olympic distance, and I actually trained and had the right, proper attire to, not lose 20 minutes on the bike. Um, and so then it was like, oh, the half Ironman. There's a Honu 70.3 Ironman Hawaii out here. And
Mhm.
it's a pretty challenging course, especially to run on the golf course. And
Mm.
and that was the next Everest. And then after that, it was, oh my gosh, the Ironman. I remember in 2006, my stupid buddy doing that. Maybe, and that just seemed like beyond. Like, if I ever do that, that's going to be it. I'm done. And then you know how it goes. It just kind of
Yeah.
keeps on going. Yeah,
Well, if I count it correctly, you've done 5 of the Ironman World Championships. Is that right?
that's correct.
Yeah, but I understand that it's one of the Honu races that was kind of your most memorable. Can you tell us a little bit about that race?
Sure. So there's, for the record, I am not a fast athlete. When someone hears 5 times Kona, they think, wow, he's qualified. But there is a backdoor entry here, being a resident, and a lottery system that they would have. So there, just to clear the record, so people
You don't
know
have to
who they're talking.
qualify it. You were at the championship. You have
But,
a ranking
yeah,
that says you're this number in the world.
yeah. Um, Gosh, this must have been 2017, 2018, the 70.3. Um, for the 70.3, the Honu, Hawaii, I'd done this swim. It was at Hapuna Beach State Park. And I'm running up out of the water and transitioning out of my swim gear into my bike gear. And I had mechanical shifting on my bike, and I noticed that my right lever was pushed all the way down. It must have been knocked in transition. And I thought to myself, I got to fix that before I jump on the bike. And I pull my bike out and I start running up to the mountain line. And what ended up happening is I clipped in and started accelerating away. And I didn't change that shifter. And so my chain had slipped from the big ring in the back all the way to the small ring when I first started pedaling, which freewheeled the pedals. And the second pedal came and blasted the back of my right calf and
Ouch.
cut it completely open. I've never been shot before, but I thought when it first hit, man, this must feel like when you get shot. It was pretty significant. And my calf was kind of filleted open, and at the time I could look down and kind of see the Achilles moving a little bit. Blood was pouring out. And thought, man, I really messed myself up here pretty good at this transition. But around the transition area, as it is in a lot of places, it was really hectic. People getting on their bike, all kinds of stuff. And I thought, I just got to get out of this area and
Yeah.
then assess the situation. And so the best way for me to get out of the area was to get on my bike and start riding. And so I just kind of figured I'd take a few pedal strokes up the road and then pull off. And I start taking a few of these pedal strokes, and I realized, like, well, I'm bleeding, but this is working. Like, I'm actually moving forward and it's working. So moving forward is the goal. Let's just keep moving forward. And so then I continued to bleed and pedal. And I thought, okay, I'm going to pull off if I start to feel a little shock, start to feel weird. But for the time being, things are still working along pretty well. And so I just got up onto the course and got myself down the arrow and started riding. And I rode the full 56 miles with this gaping wound in my leg and looking down and seeing the Achilles. And the comments I was getting from people that were passing me or I was passing were quite hilarious, um, giving me updates about how gnarly the leg looked. And I had this wild idea, and I thought, well, this is pretty cool. Like, I like handling things, and this is a fun thing to handle. And I was managing it really well. I ended up PRing the bike course. Maybe it was the adrenaline at that time,
Yeah.
and then I thought, this would be something if I could finish this half marathon and complete the whole thing with this gaping wound in my leg. And so as I started approaching T2, I was really standing up and giving it and trying to figure out, like, would my leg be able to take the pressure of running? And it felt okay, Larry. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe this will work. And so I popped off the bike and started my very first step. I collapsed.
Oh.
It wasn't, the calf was not happening for the run. So that ended up being my only DNF of my career because of that medical situation. But yeah, that was quite notable, leaving a little bit of my DNA on the bike course as I completed at 70.3. That was a good one.
That's talk about fighting through the adversity of a race. That's a good one. Leaving half muscle hanging out.
It's just feelings at the end of the day, right? So you just push it off. Yeah.
Hello, listener. I love getting your feedback and suggestions for the podcast. Keep them coming at 515ultraman@gmail.com. For those that want to help me promote the show, I suggest that you tell a friend to listen to. Word of mouth is a great way for podcasts to get new listeners. And if you don't mind publishing your feelings, a free way to support the show is by leaving a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app. It's a chance to tell me what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it too. Finally, if you're so inclined, you can show your appreciation for my work by clicking the support link at the bottom of the show notes to go to my Buy Me a Coffee page. Thanks for all of your feedback and support. Now back to the show. So you're doing these races now. Now you're part of the group. You're addicted to the triathlon life. Who is it, or what was it that got you involved in the Ultraman? Was there a certain person who said, "Okay, well, now you got to come try this," or was it just that you were seeing it anyway?
Yeah, I was really unfamiliar with Ultraman. It was at the time very, at least for me, it seemed like it was very underground still. But there was an athlete out here named Susan Smith, who her and I were friends, and we were training buddies, and we had trained together preparing for Kona, and she had completed Ultraman Hawaii, and I forget the year. And she was telling me about it, and I thought, well, that's crazy. And she was great training partners with Wendy Minor, who's a wonderful woman, and someone who's completed the race a number of times. And I knew Wendy to be a badass, and Susan was a badass. I was like, well, maybe this is what the next level is. And they were the ones that really planted the seed for me.
Yeah. And then, so did you start off by crewing before you jumped into the race, I assume? Like, what was your first crew experience?
I did. I decided to put my name in the ring for crewing in 2015. And at that time, Jane, Cheryl, and Dave assigned me to an athlete, Peter Lopinski, I think from your neck of the woods, Larry.
Yeah, he's from the Okanagan area. Yeah, Peter's a great guy. Yeah. Him and his wife are some of the happiest people you will ever meet.
They were my first experience crewing, and I only jumped in for day 3. They didn't need me for day 1 and 2, but I paced Peter for a good portion of the course on day 3 and got to know him very well and his family, and they were just a wonderful group of people. And through that experience, also got to know the Ultraman Ohana a little bit more intimately, and I think I've crewed every year since then.
And I know that a couple people that you've crewed for have been on the show as well. You crewed for Shangrila Rendon, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. She was on the podcast in season 3, episode 3, and recently on season 6 in episode 2 when we had the female round table. And I don't know if you know about this. She recently released a book.
Oh, excellent.
Yes,
Yes,
she has a
there's a lot of
downloadable
stories
book.
there. I'm glad that she was able to put that together. There's a lot of great stories that she holds for sure.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then, so where did you do your first Ultraman race then? You came over to the mainland for your first race?
I did. I did Ultraman. So my Ultraman year was 2019, where I started. I did Ultraman Florida in February of 2019
Mhm.
and qualified there for Hawaii in October of 2019.
Mhm. Who did you have on your crew in Florida?
In Florida, I was working with a coach. His name is Chris Hague. He's hasn't really been much around the Ultraman community, but I was introduced to him through some Ironman training, and he continued my Ultraman training. So it was him and his fiance at the time that came and crewed me. Just a crew
Okay.
of two. Yeah,
Yeah.
in Florida. Yeah.
And then back on the island, did you get local crew and friends and family for that one?
Yeah, so back on the island, man, that was such a special race.
Mm.
Being a resident here and being able to encircle the island, I think about making a lay around the island on Thanksgiving Day,
Mm.
and it was really, really poignant weekend. And understanding that I had my wife and my closest friends, and we call them our chosen family. These are people that I trained dolphins with back in the late '90s
Oh, cool.
and we became very close. It probably could have been a reality TV show, the house that we all lived in, dolphin training and living together, and we called ourselves the Happy Home, and it was kind of like a chosen family for a younger folks. So I had a number of our Happy Home group join the crew as well, and we were Team Happy.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
I my understanding of your race though is that maybe your professional work had to play a role in getting you to the finish line on that one. Maybe being team happy, but you did have to face some adversities along the way. Can you tell us a little bit about how your world championship went?
Oh, sure. I think anyone that is involved with this race faces adversity at some point, either due to the physicality of it or the conditions, et cetera. That weekend was especially weathery on the Big Island. I think there was a high wind warning, day one, day two, which had winds up to 50, 60 mile an hour gusts and torrential rain, especially on the Hamakua side. The volcano is always typically kind of wet, but it was especially wet from Hilo up through Waimea. And during that time, with all the debris running off the side of the road, I ended up with four flat tires. Um, and my crew had to leave me, go back into Hilo, pick up some new tubes while I'm riding in the rain. There was a lot of situations where keeping your head on straight and having a positive outlook, I think was really important. It would be really easy to fall into a negative mindset. And
Mm.
every athlete's a little bit different, but for me, I tend to do much better when I race happy and optimistic. And so really just being aware of the thoughts and feelings that would come in during those times of frustration, um, I think really helped along the way. I did have some mechanical issues also on the bike, in addition to the four flat tires. My headset was a little bit loose, and so the stability and the steering wasn't the greatest, and there's really not a whole lot I could do about that. And that was a little bit sketchy in the high wind. Um, so, really being able to stay focused and present and not allowing the mind to shift off into fear or pessimism. It was on high display, I think, on that day too.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and you also challenge yourself to pick up some speed on the course as well. I read in one of your posts.
I think that was the first year they had changed the course. It would typically go up over the Kohala Mountains. And I think
Mhm.
2019 was the first year where instead of taking that right turn up over the Kohalas, we take a left and go down Kauai High Hill. And it's a really fast descent, even on a still day, but on this high wind day and getting buffeted by the 50-mile-an-hour winds from, it was about, I don't know, 4 o'clock. So about a side back wind that was coming. Yeah, I think I hit some all-time max speeds going down that hill and was reminding myself, Billy, remember cars can take this at 45 to 50 miles an hour. They're not going to fly off the side. You could probably do the same on the bike. And it was It was a little bit hairy, but fun all at the same
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
And do you still go down that hill and challenge yourself to try and reach those speeds?
Every now and then, but not on such a windy day. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about some of your crewing experience because I
Mm,
know for you that's kind of where your joy is as well is in the crewing and meeting the people and helping to get people to the finish lines. So, as we said earlier, most recently you were working with Carrie at the Ultraman Hawaii, and you got to crew with Shane Duffy for that one. I'm wearing the
yes.
Trust L Plan shirt today for our interview. Um,
Yes.
I got to meet Shane and Carrie at Arizona and you.
That's
I
right.
got something I'm going to play for you here from your experience in Hawaii. So just one second here. This one here.
What's up, people? We got about 3:15 into the run. We're just getting off Akunapule Highway, which is the hill down from Hawaii, making our way down into Kauai High. In just about a mile, we'll be climbing out of Kauai High and taking a right turn onto the Queen Kaahumanu Highway. Easy to say. And looking to hit that marathon mark here in another hour and a half, 2 hours maybe. And feeling good. Cooling is in effect. Starting to heat up. Send the good vibes. Chee!
So that's from a video that was sent out on a little WhatsApp chat. Thanks for keeping
Yeah,
us up to date, all of us that were watching from afar. Um,
absolutely.
Obviously, you're having fun there. Your Hawaiian is great. I would never be able to say any of those names. And at the end there, you talk about cooling is in effect. How hot was it this year? And not even just this year. How important do you take cooling the athlete down at any of these races when you're crewing? Because people are always listening for the tips on this podcast. So this is your opportunity to share some of your crewing wisdom about the importance of keeping your athlete cool.
Oh, sure. It is even on the cooler days in Hawaii, which would be windier days that would blow some of the clouds over. You don't get the direct sun. It's still really hot out there. You're in the middle of the lava fields. This weekend was especially hot. The For day one and day two, it was kind of nice because we didn't have a lot of wind, so it made for maybe some faster bike splits, definitely some more comfortable bike riding for the people. But what it did mean for day three is that there was hardly any cloud cover. I call it microwave sun, and radiating off the pavement and through the lava fields. And as an athlete, running 52 miles is always going to be uncomfortable, but we try to minimize that discomfort as much as possible. And as athletes, we know that the higher the heat, the higher our heart rate, the harder things can be for digestion, nutrition, and just your overall experience. So on days like this, as a crew, I consider cooling to be just as important or even more important as the other aspects of crewing, which are typically hydration and nutrition, and some of the mental game as well. So every single stop, our athlete was doing a 9-minute run, 1-minute walk protocol. And at every one of these 1-minute walks, we would time it perfectly or try to, so that she would be walking and the van would be stopped. And it's constant water, ice. Props to Shane Duffy. There's multiple iterations of trying to get ice around the back of your neck.
Yeah.
Some people, I stole an idea from another athlete out here, Stephen Keller. He had created these bandanas with a little pocket inside, and you can put the ice in the pocket and then wrap the bandana. That was one solution we used. The one that worked actually a little bit better. Shane Duffy, through his experience, he's had lots and lots of experience as an athlete, came up with just these long cloth tubes, and you tie one end, and so you make a knot, and then you just dump the ice in, and you tie the other end. So it turns out to be a little package of ice. but then the strings are a little bit longer than the bandana, and that would allow the athlete to anchor for her. She could anchor it into her straps and keep that really tight there. So we would be replacing that ice at every walk. We'd be cooling her off, consistently through the mouth and on top of her head, and keeping that ice going. As an athlete, number one, it just feels wonderful to have something cool on your body when you're out there in the heat. Um, and I can only imagine that it would help with the overall heart rate and experience and perceived exertion as we're working out there. But to this day, I do have to say, I want to give credit to Gary Wang. Now, some people may know Gary Wang as the person as I think he's done 20 Ultraman events consecutively. He's in just this year was nominated into the Ultraman Hall of Fame. Just a wonderful man, incredible athlete, not just in Ultraman, but across the board. And I saw him one year, I forget one year, I was out here crewing, and he had a cooler full of just like pretty big beach towels that were submersed in icy cold water. And every time that he would stop, he would just wrap that icy cold towel around him like a cape.
Right.
And I thought, wow, that looks a little excessive. But I tried it one day. Oh, it is like heaven when you're a little hot. And that's something that I used as an athlete that I stole from Gary. Just to have something big on your back and cooling is, oh man, it's such a relief after running through the heat.
Yeah. And of course, Carrie Mandel became the third woman finisher at the race, because we know that the first finisher and the second finisher of the race overall were both women.
Correct.
And that was Jen Annette and Michelle Vesterby. How was it at the race for you to see that happen as well?
Well, it's never happened before, Larry, to have women be, top 1 and 2. And I think it really just speaks to those two women specifically, but also to the culture that we're kind of seeing in sport now, where at least in America, we're starting to see a lot more recognition and popularity in women in sport overall. And I think it was just perfect timing to be able to display what's possible for women here in the Ultraman. I didn't see much of them because they were way far out in front.
Yeah.
I'm following them like everyone else is by social media. But, we did have a chance to connect before and after, or mostly before. And it was just really impressive to watch them. Prior to that, Dee Dee Griesbauer had set the record out here for Ultraman, and she kind of set the bar, kind of banking on the shoulders of Hilary Biscay and some other amazing women that have participated out here. But, Jen and Michelle this year really took it to the next level. That was awesome to see. I was really stoked to see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they were on a previous podcast as well about, I had them on before the race and then again after the race to get their thoughts, as well as Steve and Gary with their Ultraman Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Excellent.
And then the year previous in Hawaii, you were crewing for Mary Latza. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right.
So Mary and Randy are probably pretty well known, especially around the Florida and Arizona Ohana.
Yes.
You gotta have a story from Mary and Randy for us.
Oh boy. They're for people that know them, they're just wonderful human beings, a lot of humor. And I think that the thing that, we all know Randy and his, how do I say it politely? His way of being. Love you, Randy. And his costumes, and he's just a great guy, right? A lot of, I was really impressed actually by Randy, not that I shouldn't have been, but his local knowledge and memory about places and here on the Big Island is pretty awesome. Like he knows what he's talking about out here. But I think the thing that, and I was also on crew there it was me, Randy, and Cynthia Bartus, who was an Ultraman finisher. And she also completed the epic event out here recently. And so it was the three of us. And I think the thing that really stood out to me was, sorry, Randy, but just watching how much Mary's in charge. Um, Mary's a wonderful woman, and I would say a beast of an athlete. And when she's ready to get stuff done, she's ready to get stuff done. And to watch her put Randy in his place a little bit was kind of cool to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
We had talked previously about meeting up with Carrie and Shane at Ultraman Arizona, and at that time you were crewing for Vedant,
That's
the
right.
young Indian man. I first met him at the Ultra520K, the last one that they did here in Canada, because
Mm-hmm.
he stayed on. Came over and did the Ultraman Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, was not well prepared for that race and didn't even have a crew on the day that he arrived. Um, he wasn't able to finish that race, but he stayed on for the weekend after and hung out with the Ultra520K crew as well. And I was
Yeah.
helping out with that race and got to know him quite well during that time. So when I saw you guys working together in Arizona, I was like, oh, he's got someone who's going to get him to the finish line, someone who knows what's going on.
Yeah.
I got another little video for you here. Let's check this one out. This is heading up to the top of the mountain of the, is it Unnecessary Hill, where you do
Yes.
the big out and back.
Yes. I think that's his nickname at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
here's there's not a lot of vocals in this clip, but here's this is more for you with Ved, and he's doing that walk that you were saying you were doing on that 10K earlier.
Yeah.
For you. Who's this guy waiting for you? All right. Yeah. Now we're talking.
Oh, let's go, man. One foot in front of the other. Let's go. You got it. Come on, man.
Let's go. There we go. Forward progress.
So everybody there was trying to
Wow.
give him a low five because he couldn't lift his arm and
Yeah.
get him up that hill. I know you were a big part of him getting to the finish line in Arizona. Tell me about your time with
Yeah.
Ben.
Well, he was so motivated to finish this race. And I was really impressed by that from the very beginning, before the race had even started, his preparation in India and the meticulous nature that he went about this. I think from his experience in Ultraman Canada, really wanting to do it a little bit one better. Um, the crew was myself and his two parents, who were very wonderful people. Of course, they loved their son tremendously, but a little bit inexperienced when it came to crewing. Um, and
That's being very polite.
Yeah.
they have no idea of what goes on in these events for their son.
No. And I think there's such an advantage, having, as an athlete, having done it, knowing kind of mentally and physically what you're going through. I think as a crew member, to have that really helps when your athlete starts to experience the natural suffering of doing a long event like this. But that day three was, I've done a lot when compared to other people, not a lot of races. I've done a good amount of races. I have a lot of, I call them me medals on the wall. I think crewing Vedant was one of the most memorable race experiences I've ever had. His day three was brutal. He was doing quite well through about mile 20, and then the wheel started to fall off. We're dealing with cramping. We were dealing with a lot of mental difficulty. We're cramping. We're crying. I was constantly looking at the watch, looking at the time, trying to assess what our pace needed to be, trying to work a run walk strategy. Well, essentially crewing by myself. So I would park the car, run back to Ved, pace with him up to the car, and then kind of leapfrog myself that way. And that worked for a period of time until I realized we needed someone by his side consistently. So I actually called in to Jen and the folks at the finish line and asked for some help. And Memo was able to come out and crew with me for the last piece. Without that, I'm not sure that Ved would have finished, because he really did need someone by his side consistently, kind of talking him off the ledge of quitting. We get to that place in our mind, and the body just tells the brain we're done. And he was definitely done at that point. But I knew that if we kept a brisk walk, that we could finish with a little jogging added in. And that's what we did. And I think he finished with about 15 minutes to spare, certainly with Memo's help driving the van and other staff and volunteers helping out along the way as well. That guy was thoroughly cooked during that run, for sure.
Yeah, you definitely did a spectacular job there, getting him to the finish line, and it was such an emotional finish line for everybody that was there.
Yeah, it was.
I've got some great photos of that one. It was a great finish.
Yeah, thank you. I felt very honored and blessed to have that opportunity to be with him and to be with his family. And they're great folks. One funny story about his dad. They just, as a dad, you love your kids so much. And out of all the athletes I've crewed, I think he was deepest in the pain cave by far.
Mm-hmm.
And just scraping along during the day, again, getting it done. And we're probably about mile 40, and Dad jumps out of the car and he's all happy and he goes, "He's doing great. He's doing a great job right now." And I'm thinking to myself, we are so far from great at this point. Like, we're like barely survival mode. And I just had a chuckle at the whole thing. I was like, yeah, we're doing great. You got it. Yeah.
Well, in that clip that I played, you did still look surprisingly fresh for, as far as we were into day 3. So you did a good job of keeping yourself going too.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, I work really well with optimism and positivity, and that's kind of how I move through my daily life. So it's not hard for me to get to that spot. And especially when on those days when you realize the challenge ahead of you, it's, that's the mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, taking all these experiences into account, how do you think competing or participating, crewing in around the Ultraman community has, changed your life or kind of made you who you are or anything like that? Like, it changes everybody. What's it done for you, do you think?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question, Larry. Thank you. I think the first 2 things that pop into my mind are, number one is Ohana, or the sense of family. And, we say things in life, even with best friends, of like, "Hey, I got you. Like, I'm always here for you. You can rely on me." And that's some of the aspects of best friendship. But when you get, as you know, when you get into these events, like, those words actually mean something, and it's real. And I've, through the events, been able to meet so many people that are willing to show up and are ready to show up at the drop of a hat. And not just through the event, but in life, right? I know now I can call 10 people that I've known through the Ultraman Ohana and say, "Hey, I'm struggling, I need help," and they'd be there for me immediately. And that sense of connection, in Hawaii we call it kuleana, or a responsibility, and it's a responsibility, I think, to show up in the best way for our family. I've always enjoyed that, but to have a group that solidifies that and brings that into action, and then that is transferable into other relationships when the event is finished, is a game changer. We need people in our life, I think, that we know are going to show up, that when I raise my hand, someone's going to be there. And that has absolutely been an outcome of participating in these Ultraman events as an athlete and crew, is creating these bonds and these friendships. And it's one of the main reasons that I love to come back, because I don't get to see these crazy people all the time. And it's like a huge family reunion. And it reminds me, I think, what the best of humanity can be, that it would, here in just our local communities, when we look at our neighbors or even a stranger as an athlete and we're ready to show up for them. and without judgment, without a second thought. I think it opens up some of the best of who we are as human beings, and Ultraman has allowed that to be reinforced and percolate more widely for me. I'm extremely thankful for that. And then second is just for me personally, the physical challenge of staying healthy. I got some white hair going on. I'm 52 and, looking forward to continuing to see what this body can do until it can't anymore. And this is an opportunity just in the day-to-day training, if you're training for an Ultraman event or an Ultra event, to be able to test the mind and body's capabilities. And this platform allows for that. And I'm so thankful for that also. Otherwise, I'd just be out there doing it by myself, and that would look even more crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Billy, thank you very much for taking the time to come and tell us about some of your experiences, and especially about the dolphins. And
Absolutely.
it's been great catching up with you again and hearing these stories. And we share many of the same friends now, so I'm sure we'll be crossing paths again.
Absolutely, Larry. It's been such a pleasure to have the opportunity to sit and talk with you. I've been a longtime listener, and it's a real treat to be here and share these experiences, and look forward to many more as we move forward.
Oh, great. Thanks for listening. All right.
Of course.
Hey, if you liked what you heard today, please tell a friend and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'd appreciate it if you'd rate and review the show while you're there. Drop the names of the people you think we should interview, and we'll get in touch with them and make that happen. Thank you for listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, a production of 55 Enterprises. Now really, go subscribe now before you forget.